In a forgotten corner of a noisy shelter, behind a cage marked, "Do not approach," lived a dog so feared, even the bravest wouldn't step near. But everything changed the moment an 8-year-old girl walked in, knelt down, and did what no one else dared. She saw him. What happened next will leave you speechless. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, give this video a thumbs up, and tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? Now let's jump into the story. In the farthest corner of the city's oldest animal shelter, past rows of barking dogs and cheerful wagging tails, sat a cage that everyone avoided. It was darker there, colder somehow, like the shadows knew something others didn't. Inside that cage was a dog named Riley. Riley was a large shepherd mix with a thick, unkempt coat, one ear half torn, and deep, watchful eyes that didn't blink much. His stare was sharp, almost angry, and his low growl could stop even the bravest volunteer in their tracks. The sign on his cage read, "Do not approach, aggressive." And no one ever did. The staff had nicknamed him the Ghost, not because he was quiet, but because he was always there, yet no one really saw him anymore. Even the newest volunteers were warned about Riley before their first day. "Keep walking past his cage," the manager would say. "He's not one we try to win over." Mr. Griggs, one of the oldest caretakers at the shelter, remembered the day Riley arrived. It had been late evening, and it was raining hard. Riley had been left tied to the shelter gate with a thick chain and no note, only scars on his body and terror in his eyes. He didn't bark or whimper, Mr. Griggs often told the others. He just stared like he'd already been through the worst this world could throw at him. The staff had tried, at first. They offered food, toys, kind words. One trainer even sat near his cage for an hour a day for 2 weeks straight. Nothing worked. Riley growled, bared his teeth, and lunged at anyone who got too close. After a few months, even hope gave up. Riley became routine, just another part of the shelter's background. His water was changed, his cage cleaned, but no one talked to him anymore. He didn't respond anyway. Most of the dogs at the shelter eventually found homes. The loud, joyful ones left first. Then the quiet, friendly ones. But Riley stayed, day after day, week after week, watching, waiting, not trusting Mr. Griggs often cleaned the kennels near Riley's cage. He never spoke much to the dog, but sometimes, when no one was looking, he'd pause and leave a small biscuit just outside the bars. Riley never touched it until the old man was gone. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the city skyline and the last visitor walked out, Mr. Griggs stood in front of Riley's cage. Rain tapped gently on the shelter windows. "You're not mean," he whispered. "You're just hurt. I can see it." Riley looked up, not with anger, not with fear, just eyes. He didn't growl, he didn't move. But he listened. The shelter's manager, a woman named Dana, had started keeping a folder marked Riley Final Review. The reality was, shelters couldn't keep dogs forever, especially ones that couldn't be adopted. There was pressure, limited space, and more dogs arriving every week. "It's not fair," Mr. Griggs had said once, gently closing Riley's cage for the night. "No," Dana agreed, glancing at the untouched treat near the bars. "It's not." Then one Tuesday afternoon, something unexpected happened. The shelter bell rang, and a soft voice floated through the hallway. A man and a little girl stepped inside. The man looked tired, wearing a raincoat with spots of mud at the bottom. The girl, about 8 years old, held his hand tightly. "We're just looking," the man said kindly. Nora wanted to visit. The staff smiled. Most kids her age came in hoping for a small puppy, something playful, fluffy, maybe something with a pink bow. They would walk past the rows of barking cages with wide eyes, and pick the one that wagged its tail the fastest. But Nora was different. As she walked down the hallway with her father, she didn't giggle or jump with excitement. She looked at each dog carefully, stopping now and then to read the names on the kennels. Then she saw the dark corner. She walked slowly toward Riley's cage. "Not that one," her father said quickly, gently pulling her hand. "He's not safe, sweetheart." But Nora didn't move. She stood in front of Riley's cage, quiet as a whisper. Riley looked up, his eyes locking with hers. He didn't snarl. He didn't growl. He just looked. For the first time in what felt like forever, Riley didn't bare his teeth. Nora crouched down and placed her hand on the cold floor outside the cage. She didn't reach in. She didn't speak. She just stayed still. The shelter grew silent. Mr. Griggs, watching from behind a crate, held his breath. And then slowly, Riley stood up and walked toward the bars. His body was tense, but not aggressive. His eyes were alert, but not angry. He took one step, then another, until he was right in front of her. They stared at each other, no words, no fear, just a quiet connection in a world full of noise. Nora had never been like other children her age. While most kids wanted loud toys, cartoons, and cotton candy-colored puppies, Nora preferred quiet corners, soft music, and books about animals. She didn't have many friends at school, but she didn't mind. Her best moments were the ones where she could just be still and let the world slow down. She and her dad, Tom, lived in a small apartment above a bakery. Tom worked long hours as a delivery driver, and Nora spent most evenings with her grandmother or quietly reading in her room. But one thing was always clear. Tom loved her more than anything. That rainy Tuesday, when they visited the shelter, had started like any other day. Nora had come home from school with muddy shoes and her hair in a bit of a mess. She was unusually quiet at dinner, stirring her noodles without eating. "You okay, kiddo?" Tom asked, wiping his hands on a towel. "I want to visit the animal shelter," Nora said suddenly. Tom looked surprised. "The shelter? You want a dog?" "I don't know," she answered. "I just feel like maybe there's someone there who needs me." Tom didn't understand what she meant, but something in her voice made him nod. And so, after dinner, they pulled on coats and headed out into the gray, rainy evening. Now, inside the shelter, Nora stood face to face with the dog everyone feared, Riley. Tom tugged gently on her hand. "Let's keep moving. This one's not safe." But Nora didn't move. Her eyes locked with Riley's, and she dropped down to sit on the cold floor. She didn't speak, didn't flinch, didn't smile. She just sat, calm and still. Riley didn't bark, he didn't snarl. He just stood there, curious and tense, staring right back at her. Tom sighed and knelt beside her. "Sweetheart, this dog's had a hard life. He's not like the others." "I know," Nora said quietly. "That's why I want to sit here." Tom didn't understand, but he could see the determination in her eyes. He stood and stepped back. Glancing around, Mr. Griggs was nearby, pretending to mop but watching closely. "She okay?" Tom asked him. Griggs nodded slowly. "Strangest thing I've seen in years. But yeah, she's fine. The dog's calm." From that day on, Nora begged to visit the shelter every afternoon after school. Tom was hesitant at first, worried about Riley's history, but the way Nora talked about him, with gentleness and quiet certainty, convinced him. So every day, rain or shine, Nora would show up. She didn't try to pet Riley or feed him through the bars. She simply sat across from his cage and talked. Sometimes she read stories from her books. Sometimes she hummed songs from the radio. Other times she just told him about her day. Who was mean at school, what she had for lunch, or how many stars she could count out her bedroom window the night before. At first, Riley barely moved. He would stay in the back of his cage, head down watching. But as the days passed, something began to shift. He started lying down near the front of the cage when Nora arrived. He didn't bark at the other dogs as much when she was around. And once, when she laughed at her own silly joke, his ears twitched as if he was listening. The shelter staff noticed the change. Even Carla, the manager, stopped by more often to peek into Riley's corner. "Unbelievable," she said one afternoon. "That dog wouldn't let anyone near him, and now he's acting like a statue when she's around." Mr. Griggs just smiled. Sometimes it's not about training or commands. Sometimes it's about feeling safe. Then one cloudy Thursday, something small but powerful happened. Nora brought her favorite stuffed animal, a worn-out rabbit named Toby. She always carried it with her for comfort, especially when she felt nervous. While sitting in front of Riley's cage, she accidentally dropped Toby. The soft toy rolled under the bars, stopping a few inches inside the kennel. Everyone nearby froze. "Don't move," Carla warned from across the hall. Nora didn't panic. She didn't even reach for the toy. She just stayed still and looked at Riley. The dog looked at the toy, then at Nora. He didn't growl. Instead, he stepped forward and sniffed it. Carefully, he laid down beside it, resting his chin next to the little rabbit. A wave of quiet awe moved through the room. "That's the first time he's ever gone near something from outside the cage," whispered one of the younger volunteers. Nora just smiled softly. "He likes Toby." From then on, Nora brought Toby with her every day. Riley began to expect them, ears perking up when he heard her footsteps down the hall. One afternoon, she started bringing small snacks. She didn't try to feed him right away, just left little pieces of apple or bread near the bars and waited. Riley would sniff them after she left, and sometimes eat them after she was gone. But each day, he moved a little closer. Each day, the shadows in his cage seemed a little less dark. Each day, Riley remembered something he hadn't felt in a long, long time: hope. The days rolled by like soft waves, one after another, each carrying a little more warmth than the one before. What began as quiet visits soon became the most important part of Riley's day. Nora still arrived every afternoon after school, always with her backpack, a small snack, and her beloved stuffed bunny, Toby. Riley, who once hid in the darkest corner of his cage, now waited by the bars. When he heard her footsteps echo down the hallway, his ears perked up, his eyes lit up. He even gave a soft tail wag, small, shy, but real. No one could believe it. Not even Mr. Griggs, who had seen hundreds of dogs pass through the shelter. "Over the years, I've never seen a turnaround like this," he said to Carla one afternoon, shaking his head in quiet amazement. "That girl's got magic in her bones." Carla, still cautious but hopeful, nodded. Or maybe she just sees what the rest of us missed. That afternoon brought a moment no one was expecting. Nora had settled into her usual spot by the cage, munching on a peanut butter sandwich. She always shared, tearing off tiny pieces and gently placing them near the bars. Most days, Riley would wait until she left before sniffing them. But this time was different. Nora took a small bite, smiled, and then tore off a piece just a little bigger than usual. Without saying a word, she rested it gently inside the cage, just past the metal bars, and waited. Riley didn't move at first. He looked at the food. Then he looked at Nora. And then, slowly, he inched forward. The shelter went quiet. Even the loudest barkers seemed to hush, as if they too were holding their breath. Riley crept closer to the food, step by step. His paws moved slowly. His eyes never left Nora's. When he reached the piece of sandwich, he paused, just for a moment, and then carefully picked it up. He didn't growl. He didn't run. He just ate it. And then he sat right there, close to the bars, right in front of Nora. Nora smiled, her cheeks rosy with joy. She didn't cheer or clap. She simply whispered, "Good boy, Riley," and rested her small hand near the cage, just outside his reach. That moment on, everything changed. Each visit brought a little more progress. Riley started playing with the ball Nora gently rolled into the cage. At first, he only watched it. Then one day, he pushed it back with his nose. Another time, Nora brought a small book filled with animal poems. She read one aloud about a brave lion who found peace in a quiet garden. Riley, lying beside the bars, closed his eyes as she read, calm and at ease. Ms. Vanda, the kind behaviorist who had joined the shelter recently, began visiting during Nora's time with Riley. She didn't interfere, just observed from a distance with a gentle smile on her face. "I think it's time we try something new," she said one afternoon to Carla. "Let's open the cage, just a crack, while Nora's here. No sudden moves, let Riley decide." Carla hesitated, then agreed. The next day, after Riley had calmly sniffed a toy from Nora and taken a treat from her hand, Mr. Griggs slowly opened the cage door about 6 inches and stepped back. Riley looked at the opening, then at Nora. He didn't charge. He didn't bark. Instead, he took a careful step out, not all the way, just enough so his nose poked through. He sniffed her shoe and then quietly lay down, half in, half out of the cage. Nora didn't move. She simply smiled and continued humming a soft tune, something slow and sweet like a lullaby. "That dog," whispered a young volunteer nearby, "used to growl like thunder if you walked past. Now he's acting like a sleepy house pet." "It's not a trick," Mr. Griggs added. "It's trust." As the weeks passed, Riley began spending more time outside his cage, but only when Nora was there. Ms. Vanda guided him gently into a small fenced yard attached to the back of the shelter, where Nora could sit on a bench and talk to him without bars in between. At first, he kept his distance. He sniffed the grass. He circled. But each day, he came a little closer. And then, one cloudy afternoon, he sat beside Nora on the bench. Her eyes widened in surprise. "Hi, buddy," she whispered. He looked at her, then slowly leaned his head against her arm. Nora didn't move for a full minute. She just let him stay there, heavy head and all. Inside the shelter, Carla wiped away a tear as she peeked through the glass door. "You were right," she whispered to Miss Vanda. "She sees what we couldn't." Back at the bench, Nora stroked Riley's fur gently. His body relaxed more with every touch. "You're doing great," she whispered. "You're not scary, you're just scared. But it's okay now." And Riley, the dog who once growled at the world, closed his eyes and let out a deep, calm breath. The sun peeked through the clouds that Saturday morning, casting soft light across the shelter yard. Riley, the once unreachable dog, now paced gently at the gate, ears forward, tail moving in slow, happy waves. He wasn't waiting for a treat or a walk. He was waiting for Nora. When she stepped through the back door, backpack bouncing, Riley gave a small bark. Not a loud one, just a happy, "Hello." Nora smiled, ran to the bench, and patted the seat beside her. "Morning, sleepyhead," she said. "Guess what? I brought cheese today." The staff had grown used to the sight of the two friends. Together, Nora seated calmly, telling stories or sharing snacks, Riley lying beside her, always alert but peaceful. It was hard to believe this was the same dog they once feared, the one whose growls echoed down hallways like a warning. Carla, the shelter manager, leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching with quiet joy. "He's ready," she said, softly to Mr. Griggs, who stood beside her with his mop. Mr. Griggs nodded. "The real question is, are we?" The answer came that same afternoon. Nora's father, Tom, arrived early. His face looked unsure, but his eyes were full of hope. For weeks, he had seen the change in his daughter, the light in her face, the excitement in her voice. And he had seen the change in Riley, too. Nora ran to him, clutching a folder filled with papers and photos. "Can we do it, Dad? Can he come home, please?" Tom looked at her, then at Riley, who sat beside her calmly, tail wagging. There was no fear in the dog's body, no tension in his eyes. "Let's talk to Carla," Tom said with a small smile. "I think it's time." What followed was a careful process. Carla and the staff explained everything. Home checks, training support, a long list of responsibilities. Nora nodded at every word, determined to do whatever it took. Tom promised to take Riley to obedience classes and keep a trainer on call. The final meeting ended with signatures, a handshake, and a room full of happy tears. The next day, Riley walked out of the shelter, not in a crate, not pulled by force, but calmly. Beside Nora, his leash was loose, his head was high, and his tail wagged in wide, slow circles. The staff lined up along the hallway, clapping and cheering softly. "You're a good boy now, Riley," one volunteer whispered. "He always was," Nora replied proudly. "He just needed someone to notice." Their apartment was small, but cozy. Tom had cleared out the corner of the living room and placed a big soft bed there. Nora had made a hand-painted sign that read, "Riley's Spot." When they got home, Riley sniffed the new surroundings, circled the couch, then returned to Nora's side and sat. That first night, Nora curled up next to him on the floor, her hand resting on his thick fur. She whispered, "You're safe. Now you're home." Riley let out a long breath and rested his head beside hers. Weeks passed, then months. Riley settled in like he had always belonged. He no longer flinched at loud noises. He barked excitedly when Nora came home from school, and followed her from room to room like a shadow with a heartbeat. He even made peace with the neighbor's cat after a few nose-to-nose sniffs. Of course. But the most amazing thing came from Nora herself. One day, her teacher called Tom to say something unusual had happened. Nora had stood in front of the class and given a speech, something she'd never done before. Her topic: how to earn trust from someone who's scared. She was calm, clear, and confident, the teacher said. "It was the best thing I've ever seen." Tom smiled proudly. She learned it from Riley. But the story doesn't end there. Inspired by Riley's transformation, Tom and Nora signed up for a special program in the city. It helped dogs with difficult pasts become therapy animals. It was slow at first, careful steps, gentle practice. But Riley took to it like he'd been waiting his whole life. Soon, Riley was visiting schools with Nora. He'd sit calmly as children read to him. Some of those kids were quiet, like Nora had once been. Others were anxious or lonely, or simply unsure of themselves. But when they looked into Riley's soft eyes, something changed. He didn't speak, of course. But he didn't need to. His quiet presence said everything. "You're safe here. You're seen. You matter." One afternoon, Nora sat in a circle of children at a local library. Riley lay beside her, head on his paws. A little boy next to her, no older than 6, whispered, "He looks brave." Nora smiled and replied, "He is, but he wasn't always. Did you teach him?" She looked at Riley, who lifted his head, just enough to rest it gently in her lap. "No," she said softly. "We taught each other." And in that moment, with sunshine pouring through the windows and a room full of quiet joy, it was clear. This wasn't just a story about a dog finding a home. It was a story about a girl finding her voice. And together, they found a place where they both belonged.